welcome to Quoted for Truth, the game where Brendan and I have a lively debate about the hot topics of the week. This is July 27th, and there's been a lot of news this week, so let's get down to business.
Okay, so first of all, John Davison, in case you're wondering, he's on vacation.
Getting mauled by a bear as we speak, so let's wish him luck.
Yeah, I don't know why he planned that.
You plan for camping, you plan for bear attacks.
If you're going to bring your kids, John Davison is a bad father.
Oh.
Just putting that out there.
Oh, wow. Too soon.
Okay, first story, though, getting into this. Nintendo to become primarily a software company, says former EA executive Bing Gordon. Now, people have been predicting the downfall of Nintendo since pretty much the 16-bit era, yes. Since they had a place to fall from. But Gordon is just the latest to suggest that, things aren't looking so good in the future. As handhelds become less of a moneymaker, his argument is that Nintendo will eventually need to put their best-selling games on hardware other than their own. Tom, is it finally going to happen?
I don't know, because I don't know the future. I'm just a dude. But I do know that if this does come to fruition and Nintendo has to go third party in order to sustain their business, that is a terrible, terrible, terrible sign for the industry. Because Nintendo, unlike Valve and Sony and Microsoft, they're a game company first, foremost, last, first, only. That's it. That's all they are. They're a game company. And if it's like proven that you can't succeed in this business just making great games, then what does that mean for the future of this industry? Then you need to be this service that provides Netflix or, all this other stuff. Why can't you just make games? So I really hope that Bing is wrong. Has Bing ever been right? Just anyone named Bing? It just doesn't carry any kind of weight. But yeah, what is your argument to this?
Like you, I hope he's not right, but I fear that he is. If you look at the industry landscape from, the days of like Atari, Sega, and Nintendo as the major players.
Yep.
We've gone beyond that, and now it attracted the attention of Sony and Microsoft, and even to a certain extent, Apple. Now,
a certain extent, Apple is in this.
Yeah, they are, but it's basically these huge companies. Yep. With so much influence in so many different parts of our lives that are dominating the game space now, and I just don't know if Nintendo has the money to compete on research and development, if they're going to be able to keep up with this, and they also just what are they good at? Microsoft, Sony, and Apple, they're good at spending lots of money and getting the word out there and marketing their stuff. Nintendo, the Wii obviously phenomenally successful, but that was sort of a lightning in a bottle kind of thing, and I'm not sure that they can keep doing that in a world where, everything is about online and social connectivity.
Here's my brilliant counter to that. This is brilliant. So Sony and Microsoft and Apple and Valve, they do a lot of... Valve doesn't really do everything. They are still games. But the other guys, they do everything.
Yeah.
It's a plus and a minus, though. Because, how many times have we talked about in the office or on the show, like, Microsoft has no focus on games and they got their hands in so many pots that, they got the honey bucket on their head. Like, that is distracting. And Sony...
We always say they have their hands in so many pots, they have the honey bucket on their head.
That's what you think when you think of Microsoft.
We just say honey bucket.
Honey bucket.
Shorthand in the office. Everyone knows where you're...
And then there's Sony, like, we always hear about how, like, the different parts of the company don't even talk to each other. Like, it's not always a good thing that you do everything. Nintendo does one thing, and they do it better than anyone else in the world by far. Like, there's not even a number 2 software publisher in the world. Like, they are really good at what they do. And they continue to focus on that. And all of their R&D, which is smaller than Sony's, smaller than Microsoft's, all of it is focused on making games as good as possible. And sometimes that's a gimmicky way, and sometimes that is a real way. But I don't know. I think Nintendo has a place in this industry as long as this industry is about games.
What they do, though, is make Nintendo games better than anyone else.
Yeah.
And there are so many parts of the gaming industry now that Nintendo just doesn't really participate in. First-person shooters, third-person action games that aren't like mascot platformers.
What I call fads.
Fine.
There you go. No counter to that.
Fox Racer 2D2 in the comments, talking about Bing Gordon's comment, says, in his dreams, Nintendo will always sell hardware and games until the end of time. And Nintendo faithful are called that for a reason.
It's because it's like I love Nintendo, so you could say I'm a Nintendo faithful, but I love all of these systems now. Like, they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but I guess it's just, for me, it's like I just want a company who caters to my needs, and it's still video games over Netflix.
Solon O'Card, Nintendo needs to keep the DS relevant by making it a multimedia machine. It won't compete directly with the iPad, not at a reasonable price point or retaining true handheld portability, but it can definitely overlap their functionality. And that actually speaks, I think, to one of the biggest problems that Nintendo's facing is, like, is portable gaming really, is it in here for the long haul still, or is it kind of being replaced by iPads and phones?
Well, it seems like it's being replaced, especially since Apple's got, like, a controller prototype going on. But Nintendo can adjust. They'll find a way. We're going to end this discussion with just one more quote from Lord X, maybe. The day that Nintendo makes games for smartphones will be the day the console gaming industry dies, and I agree 100% with that, which is why we're ending with that. Because he quoted the truth or whatever the show's about. Like, that was the truth.
Okay, set up the next story then.
Oh, this one's about EA, so we're going from, Nintendo and EA, they're very different sides of the spectrum. EA's had a football monopoly for 8 years, I believe. 7 or 8 years.
Yep.
And the courts are like, this is kind of bunk. You got the Madden, you got the NCAA, you got AFL. I don't. They have football. They have like everything. It's crazy. So they said, okay, you guys got to stop this. And EA is like, sure, we will go 5-year stretch from 2014 to 2019 without having exclusivity. Anyone can make games.
But that's only in NCAA games.
That's NCAA games, yes. So they're giving up the exclusivity for 5 years, but they're still going to make games during that. So, knowing this, what does the future of digital football hold?
More of the same. and I hate to be such a wet blanket. That's kind of my role here. But take a look, take a step back at this and just ask yourself, okay, so in 2015, NCAA football, someone else can make a game.
Yeah.
But who? The one that springs to mind is going to be Take-Two, right?
Of course. They made All-Pro Football recently. They made the revered NFL 2K.
2007 was All-Pro Football.
Seriously? It was 5 years ago?
5 years ago.
Okay.
And they were only 2 years out of shape in making a football game after that, because they made NFL 2K5. 3 years, I guess. So
I did not do math prior to the show.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
It's been a while for them. And they're going to be going up against EA, which still has their Madden brand, and the NFL is completely locked down. And you're going to be going up against that with a college football game, which is already kind of the little brother. And you're going to invest how much money to make a next-gen college football game that right out of the box, first installment, is going to be able to compete against EA, who's been doing this every year for the past 20 years?
So, I mean, if 2K is that company, and I agree that if anyone makes a real game and not like an arcade-style college football game, it'll be 2K. Like, that's the obvious one. So if they do it, they'll have 3 years to make it, because they have today, and then 3 years from today is when it comes out. So they have 3 years to make it. And let's just say that it's merely good, but it's different from the seen it before Drek that NCAA is becoming. Like, they could recoup their investment just from the jaded people who want, like, a legitimate, cool, interesting college game. Maybe they can make their foothold. I mean, I'm just talking about optimistically for them. Like, they have a chance to do something.
I think you're grossly overestimating this, because people said for years, hey, if they just did an unlicensed football game, people would, just out of jadedness for that, they would sign on for all-pro football.
Nobody made this argument. You just made up an argument that didn't exist. You need the license. You need it. Okay, so let's just say that they do this. They invest $20 million.
And
it's 3 years to make it. And they sell it for $20 or $30, so they undercut the NCAA thing. And people already are sick of NCAA because that game is the same thing every year. And EA's kind of really evil with the way they do like DLC with it. So
EA has shown that it's willing to cut its own stuff, the price of its own stuff, down to $20. And its licensors, like the NFL, probably aren't happy with the devaluing of their brands when this kind of price war happens, and would be more likely to sign exclusivity agreements with EA whenever they can. Now, on this one also, 2015 comes out, you've got let's say it's a competent football game, with next-gen gloss in it and everything. And EA's got basically the same thing, only it's very much like previous versions.
Okay.
EA's will have a lot more features.
This is true.
It'll be feature-rich. It'll have all the complexity and general manager modes and dynasties and trophies and arenas.
It'll have a lot of stuff.
The Take-Two one's probably going to be their first crack at it, and it's probably not going to be as full-featured.
Yeah.
Do you think that actually matters to the consumers at the end of the day? The mass consumers that these football games are targeted at? Are they going to be willing to put up with a really kind of a shallow gaming experience compared to the...
I think as long as you have an online dynasty mode, which would of course mean you have an offline dynasty mode, an exhibition, and one-off games also. As long as you have that, I think you're fine. I think all the other stuff EA crams in there is just to have something on the back of the box, and that Heisman and Road to Glory and these other... everything else in that game is just bloated crap that you can cut. So as long as they focus their attention on what people actually want, I think they're fine. And the core gameplay that 2K makes, like, it's really good. So it's different from what EA does. So I mean, they haven't forgotten how to make a game. I don't know. They
don't have an active football development team there. It's different people. You can't get the band back together when the band is 100 people.
You can. It's just like Beatles 2. It's just the same way. Someone's holding out for Beatles 2.
Drunken Peasant in the comments said, competition's always good for the consumer. Hopefully this will give EA a reason to do some new things with the NCAA games, even though they are not bad.
It's hard to argue with that. That's kind of both of our perspectives, is that competition is always good and always drives companies to do better.
Right. I don't think consumers will support it for the sake of supporting competition, though. And I think the publishers that look at this right now, it's too big a risk going up against EA on their, when EA has home field advantage.
See, if this was 2K from a couple years ago when they were really struggling
and irresponsible with their money and doing things like signing huge third-party exclusivity deals for Major League Baseball, which would get their executives ousted and then have the new management come in and just throw them right under the bus for that.
I mean, it's a good point. I know that the 2K guys still like football. Like, I talked to them at E3 with like a basketball preview. Like, they still.
Now you're name dropping your famous friends.
No, I don't know any of their names. I'm not good with that kind of stuff. I just talked. I mean, they're still into it, or at least some people there still are. It seems like this is too big of an opportunity to just pass up, because after that 5 years, exclusivity might be up. Maybe. I don't know.
Another thing I want to bring up about this, because it's a settlement to a class action lawsuit, there's also some payouts for anyone that bought a Madden or NCAA game.
Yeah.
You can get up to $70 if you go onto the website and claim that you bought like 16 games over that period.
Nobody should do this.
Yeah. And the reason Tom says that is because any unclaimed money from the $27 million that EA is putting up for this will go to Child's Play. So,
yeah.
Probably, I don't know, a better cause than you getting an extra few bucks in your pocket.
Especially if you get that $70 and buy the new Madden with it. So that just...
And CA Links in the comments said, fans shouldn't be getting financial compensation, but I'm happy to see EA let go of the reins. I can't believe the NFL signed that exclusivity agreement, though.
Yeah, well, the NFL's all about exclusivity.
And one more comment I got to mention just because. Samantha Sneeze. OMG, that pic with Donald Duck and the rest of the green football players on the news menu is friggin' creepy pasta.
Donald Duck?
Was it
the Oregon Duck?
Yeah, we used Oregon Duck.
That's pretty good.
Those are the assets for the new EA NCAA football games, basically.
We have like a video going, and it says like, in punting, players stay in their lines. It's like, how many... Wait, what? That's a thing you're pimping now?
You can't do that until like the 19th or 20th iteration of college football.
We gotta move on before I puke.
Okay, next story then. Braid, John Blow.
Yeah.
Always good fodder.
Yes. You're reading this, though.
I am? Okay.
The illusion has been destroyed, Brendan.
Yes, it has. I'm sorry. So John Blow recently, in an interview, he spoke out against the certification process for console games. He said that they're needless requirements and the lengthy certification process ultimately, he says, it hurts developers and hinders their ability to make the games as good as possible. Most recently, I guess Fez would have been a good example of the certification process in action. What do you think, Tom? Are the console makers, are they too strict with this, or do you kind of like living in your comfy walled garden?
I actually don't have a clear answer for this because it's tough because I hear people talk about iPhone apps crashing. I'm not really a big smartphone guy, and my Android has been fine so far. So, but I hear people say, "Oh, you download some of them and they crash."
Yeah.
But I also have had a PC for 25 years, and I haven't had issues with PC games generally. I mean, there's the stuff like where Ubisoft just poops out a port, but like generally speaking, it's the games are fine, especially games that are built for the PC.
Yeah.
They work fine. So I see both sides of how this works, like because you can have no certification process and be fine. And I think ultimately, if you don't have a certification process and you release games that suck, if you're not Bethesda, if you release games that don't work, people won't buy your stuff anymore. Like it's just how it goes. Like there are lots of people out there, PlayStation owners, who will never buy a Bethesda game day one because they know that it's not going to work. So I think that it kind of sorts itself out because people, if you get burned once, you're not going to do it again. So I think that they should lessen their restrictions. I think maybe I don't know.
Okay, so how about the Fez situation there? That was an example where Fez came out and it was a little busted. They released a patch for it, and the patch corrupted some people's game saves. And then Microsoft told them if you want to release another patch for it, that's going to be what, $40,000 or something. And they were like, this affects there are so few people that we'll just say nope. We'll put the old patch back up. And tough luck, everyone.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. This is actually, there's a comment from Vec0N. I'm not sure I pronounced that. He should play Fez and rethink this over. That is the ultimate argument against certification. Because the certification process is supposed to be like, hey, this game doesn't crash to the desktop.
And it still failed.
Yeah, hey, this game doesn't corrupt your save, and it still failed. So if the certification process is supposed to protect us, then it just completely, Fez has thrown that out the window. And if there wasn't one and you could just release patches, that game would have been fixed already. So, yeah, it's interesting that argument can go on both sides of there, but I think that supports Jonathan Blow pretty easily.
Here's another one. Fanaticism says, great, another oracle of the gaming industry forecasting doom for the consoles. Move on to PC gaming development if you don't like consoles. Others will replace you. It's a circle. And there's some truth in that last bit, but...
Right,
it's a circle? Is that the...
Yeah, like if too many people move to the PCs, then all of a sudden Xbox Live becomes less cluttered. It's easier to get on there. Easier to get your game.
I think that the more difficult it becomes on the consoles and the easier it becomes on iOS and PC, the consoles are going to be the ones that die off. Because we see the MPDs every month and it's just plummeting every single month. We don't see MPDs for iOS and PC because MPD doesn't give us valuable information. But those seem to be doing pretty good from all we hear, especially just as far as quantity, not even sales. But a lot of developers are making PC games and iOS games because they can easily.
The huge problem, though, is getting awareness for your games, is getting them in front. Like if you make the iOS store, selected games, featured games thing, you're set. And if you don't, you can have a great game that just kind of languishes because no one knows how to find it.
I guess like as social media becomes more ingrained with us and people watch less TV and they look at, I don't know. I mean, it seems like commercials are less important and space is less important because everybody's on Facebook and everybody's on Twitters. And if there's a good game, you'll hear about it somehow. Like you don't necessarily need that outside source. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it seems like pushing forward is going to become more and more important that just people tweet about your game and say they like your game. And that's...
Does this creep you out at all that advertising is moving more towards word of mouth?
No, I think it's I was going to say it's more trustworthy, but it's who you trust.
But at the same time, the companies are looking more towards how can they build word of mouth instead of how can they buy, ads in order to get it in front of more people.
It's harder for them to do that because it has to be genuine word of mouth.
You would think so.
Well, no, but
on the other hand, you've got official spokespersons and community managers with hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, and people, care deeply about them.
I mean, there's a lot of people on Twitter who are just shills. People I like and respect who apparently just shill their stuff on Twitter. But like the people I follow, like Philip Kohler, who works at Polygon, like when he says a game is good, and I follow him on Twitter, and he's like, "Oh, he says it's good," I would probably try that out because I respect and trust him generally. And I think that a lot of people are like me, where they follow people they trust and like, as opposed to just talking head from fill in the blank studio. So I think that as we become more comfortable with this, you don't really need traditional advertising. You just need social media. And I don't know. I mean, this is a little bit in the future we're talking about. We're getting away from the subject.
Okay.
I think Jonathan Blow is completely right that you need to adjust with the times. And Nintendo having a gold seal back in the NES saying this game works on our system is a little bit outdated now in the era of patches and online and all this other stuff. Yeah. So,
we'll give Vader 501st the last word on this. Amazing how indie devs have more common sense than most AAA developers out there.
Yeah, I like that. I like that ending on that. So now we're gonna go to Happy Story. Much happier story.
A happy story fueled by the failure of other people. Thank you, Tom. That's such an uplifting.
It's a failure of whatever. Okay, so Zynga they're one of the most hated publishers in the world because they make really manipulative games on Facebook and social. This is what they do.
Manipulative, even.
They're really evil. So yesterday, word came out that their stock dropped 40% because their earnings stink because they don't make money because they spend billions of dollars on OMG Pop for Draw Something.
Yeah.
Is this the end of Zynga, or is this just a bumper in the road for that really poorly run, crappy company?
Oh man, you're really gonna make me like defend Zynga here, aren't you?
This is gonna be interesting.
I think it's a bump in the road. Basically, I think the problem with Zynga is they had this huge growth in social games and Facebook games, and then they didn't really know exactly what to do, so they kind of got a little too big for their britches and figured, you know what, we can be a huge titan. Some dude said our valuation is bigger than EA's right now. We're going to have our IPO, and we're really just going to be the next big thing. And they took the things that were working for them, and then they hammered on them so hard with so little regard for the end user and whether or not they were having any fun playing their games.
Yep.
They just tried to squeeze as much money out of them. And I think it's sort of... They got caught up at the beginning of a fad, and they didn't understand what they were. They didn't understand that so much of that success was ephemeral.
Okay, so you've been talking about their past.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about their future? What's their plan? How are they going to resurrect this dying company? Because they announced it yesterday.
It's not a dying company.
No,
it's just not as
ignore
big
my
as they
hyperbola.
had
Ignore my hyperbola and tell us how they're going to fix themselves, because this is funny to me.
Your hyperbole?
Yeah, whatever. I like math too.
What they're going to do is, I think if they're smart, they're going to contract and focus on what they do well.
They're going to do gambling.
Yes.
That's what they're going to do.
Zynga Poker.
Yes.
And that's been going for 4 years, I think, and is maybe still the most popular game on Facebook. If they can kind of dovetail this into a real money gambling situation, they're going to go for that. I mean, I think right now the problem is that they're still trying to be huge. They're still trying to be the next big thing, and they've got this new platform, Games with Zynga or Zynga with Friends. That's it, Zynga with Friends. That they want to exist outside of Facebook with. And it's just sort of, if they weren't aiming so high and they weren't so aggressive about going for every last dime that their
if they weren't a capitalist company, is what you're saying. So I'm going to take a very different...
If they had a little restraint.
I'm going to take a very different stance with this. They focus on social games that are geared towards people who are not hardcore gamers. Mm-hmm. They're basically games you can play for 5 minutes at a time, and they're kind of fun, and they...
Okay.
I think those are dying. I think that there is a market for the average person to have one or two of those a year, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's it.
But that market isn't going away. It just needs a correction.
I think it's a lot smaller than it is right now, like the actual market size. So I think if your entire business is built on, we're going to make 10 games, and we're going to hope people play these... People aren't going to do that, because they're going to play one of those games, maybe.
Right.
So you have to make sure you appeal to people who actually want to buy games, not just play games. And I think that this market is really small. Like the portable, like the Angry Birds market, the people who just want to play for 5 minutes on a train. Like now that they have Angry Birds, now that they have Words with Friends, now they have like these couple different types of games. I don't think that there's
They're good
like
for a while.
I don't think that 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, they're still going to be buying new games all the time. I don't really think that that's what this market is. So you can't really bank on like millions of people are going to buy all of these different types of games we're releasing. So I think that you're going to have to be a small company. You're going to have to be very smart, and you're going to have to branch out to stuff that has more lasting appeal than just the stuff that Zynga is primarily known for. I mean, one of the reasons why I was going to say Pogo, and I'm just blanking on the name. The guys who make Bejeweled were so successful initially is because those games are great no matter what kind of gamer you are.
Okay.
Those are really hard to do, and I think Zynga thought they could cash in on that, and it's not an easy thing to do. Like those games are kind of brilliant. So I don't know.
Richard III, I agree with him. He said when a company comes out of the gate very aggressively and doesn't seem to have a good long-term plan, well, it's pretty obvious. Big P also, people still play Farmville? Don't use Facebook myself, but I would have thought the mainstream crowd would have moved on to something else.
No, the problem is that they move from Farmville to nothing. That's the problem for Zynga.
Well, the thing with Zynga is that they moved from Farmville to Cityville, and they left Farmville behind.
Oh,
and
well,
they wouldn't be spending any more on Cityville. It's just kind of like Zynga kept making new stuff, but just shuffling around where their players were.
Yeah, but they also not as many people went to Cityville as Farmville.
And then Ice Chef 007 gets the last word. So much for the free-to-play model being the future of gaming. Perhaps this will also remind companies that casual gamers are not a good long-term source of income.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. Though I do think free-to-play will last a little bit longer, but
unfortunately.
Yeah. So the last major story of the day.
Diablo 3 bug makes cheaters invulnerable. So this kind of gets back to once upon a time, there were cheats and exploits for games, and you could just, buy a tip book from the store and then enter a code and have all that. But those have kind of been getting less and less common as online connectivity, microtransactions, achievements, they're all kind of standard in games now. Diablo 3 was built on that foundation, so it was really surprising when someone figured out this bug with the wizard class, activate a couple of their abilities at the same time, just as you head into a cutscene, and then bam, you're invulnerable forever.
Yep.
How'd that make that through the cracks? I mean, like, that's... How big a deal is that, Tom, for a game like Diablo 3?
It's really funny that we're talking about this topic because we don't talk about specific games on QFT. That's not really our thing. We talk about industry trends and how this affects stuff. But we're talking about this because this is a big industry trend. The reason this is a big deal and not just like a Diablo story is because like we don't have cheats anymore because it interferes with marketplaces. Like the system, the service.
Business models.
Yeah, this business models. That's what I wanted to say. Because it's like, this isn't a game. This is like a platform for making money hand over fist for Blizzard. So back in the day, this would have been cool. And it's like you would have played single player offline and you would have exploited the hell out of the game because it's fun to do that. We've all done God mode and Doom and stuff because that's fun. But you can't do this in Diablo 3 because everybody's connected to this stupid Blizzard online network. And there's a real money auction house. So if somebody is like farming based not on their own skill, but on like this cheat, then it destroys the delicate economy. I cannot believe we're talking about an economy in a video game.
Yeah, in-game economies.
There's a lot of evil companies we're talking about today.
Wow. So you throw words like evil around, really.
Blizzard is a company built on addiction. They're the Jack Daniels of video game developers. It's not even a defense to saying they're not evil. You could say EA's not and they're lazy, but this is just evil.
Wow.
I mean, Blizzard is like a shocking company to me because it's all about like, we don't want you to ever stand up. We want you to lose your social commitments because our games have that little bar that goes up. So like that's an evil company, I think, because they're exploiting people's like base desires or gain.
They're in the pocket of someone that's making a medication for deep vein thrombosis.
I don't know what that means. It sounds very sexual, though.
No, it's to sit down for too long and get a blood clot that kills you.
Oh,
thing.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, they are what happens when capitalism runs amok, basically.
Wow.
Because they're pure for money, and it's at the detriment of their consumers, which is weird.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't know if I wouldn't go that far. But I don't know if I'd go quite that far.
Okay.
Suiko Gaiden. Why should people be reprimanded for glitching a single-player game, and why should people need to pay real-world money for game items that should cost only fake gold? Diablo 3 is a joke.
That's a good question, isn't it? Why? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's irritating because, like, they do this real money auction house. They have this in-game economy, and then they do things like have the always online connection so that they can lock down that economy and protect it and make sure that it's not going to get ruined by things. And then their own bugs have worked their way in here. And so it's like, do I really care that other people aren't able to glitch and item dupe and stuff from the outside when they can screw the economy up just as easily from the inside?
Yeah, I mean, glitches used to be about maximizing your fun like a game genie, and now it's about running the economy. There's a quote from Ziggy.
ST Ziggy?
ST Ziggy. There must have been a rush to get Diablo 3 out the door. It just seems to be one bug after another. I'm happy I didn't buy this one. That's a really interesting comment because this game took like a decade to make. Why is it so buggy? Like it's a fair question. Like and I understand that every game has bugs, but like Blizzard is all about like, well, we don't release games until they're done. And then they released a game that didn't have their PvP. And they're like, well, at least we polish our games. It's like, no, you didn't do either of them. And you didn't innovate except in your financial model. So what was going on in the 10 years there?
It's difficult to replicate the, millions and millions of people hammering on the game in the months since it has come out.
Oh, yeah.
In the QA process. And glitches.
They had no experience with a massively multiplayer online game before this either.
This isn't massively multiplayer even.
I know, I'm aware it's not an MMO. Of all the companies who should understand how this works, it's Blizzard. It's just interesting to me, and it almost feels like they did push it out the door earlier than expected. So
yep, Unreal Master says, and this is why they shouldn't have real money auction house.
So if they didn't have real money and they just had an in-game auction house, but it was still everything else is the same.
Yeah.
This would still be a major problem, though, wouldn't it?
It would still be a problem because it's tilting the balance of the gameplay.
Yeah.
But it's less of a problem when your game's gameplay is broken than when your game's business model is broken.
Oh, my God. This is just such a bum-out story to me. Like, I remember
when if we had a podcast, we would have talked about games and whether or not they were fun and good.
No, this is more fun than talking about games. But I mean, it's just like going back to the first topic when we talked about Nintendo and how they're still a company, and it's like they churn out some very similar games. They're not always innovative, but
no, they are not.
They're a game company, and it's like I really appreciate that they're a game company. And like when you buy a game, as of today, when you buy a game, it's done. I mean, in the future they're gonna have DLC and stuff, I guess. But I miss those days of just having a game that isn't a system service and doesn't try to addict me or hook me.
Yep.
It's just to sit down and have fun for an hour.
Yeah.
So I mean, Blizzard is basically against everything I believe games are. Or maybe you could put Zynga in there too. So but Zynga's not bad. They just don't know how to make something good.
There's a place for the Zyngas and the Blizzards of the world. Clearly, I mean, I'm worried about that being pretty much the only thing out there. Because when you look at a company like Nintendo that has always been so stick to its guns stubborn about every little thing, when even they're coming around on this and starting to say, oh, okay, we'll do better online, we'll do DLC, we'll look at it more as a social service kind of thing. Like that just kind of tells me that there aren't going to be many people left really making the kind of games that...
The Blizzard model to me is we make a mad amount of money, but it's not enough. We want to make more. And that's what's sad.
Well, that pretty much is any publicly traded company.
I know.
Blizzard is just better at it than most people. Quick hits. Let's wrap it up here. Borderlands has zero competition, says Gearbox bigwig Randy Pitchford. Tom... Is this the craziest thing Pitchford has ever said, or is it just another crazy thing?
It is just another crazy thing. The thing that competes with Borderlands for me is any cooperative game. So though there isn't anything identical, there's tons of other games that are competing head to head. Halo.
See, I look at it and I'm like, first-person shooters, more so than just co-op. Like, I think any first-person shooter. Like, would he want to launch against Halo 4 and Black Ops 2 this winter?
Because that's some competition.
Yeah.
That is some competition. And our final quick hit of the day, the lack of next gen is hurting creativity, says Ubisoft. I'm not going to pronounce his name because I can't. Yves Guillemot.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Brennan, is this a real problem or is this just an excuse?
It is the thing that makes me think you're doing it wrong. Like if you're like, oh, we need more technology and that's the only thing, that's where the bottleneck on innovation is. It's like that is the last place where there's a bottleneck on innovation. Everything else about the industry and your company and the way it is set up is throttling back the innovation. And that includes us as gamers and what we spend our money on.
Yeah, I agree.
But it is not it is not the lack of technology.
No. But I will say whatever gets Beyond Good and Evil 2 out the door quicker, whether we have to stay in this generation or go to the next, I'm all for that. Because that game is going to be cool. What are you looking bad at me for? You could have a creative sequel. It counts. So that does it for this week's Quoted for Truth. We quoted a lot of truth and a lot of ignorance.
So much ignorance.
Mostly out of our own mouths was the ignorance. But we had a good time. We hope that you liked it, and comment us about how bad we were if you want, or how good we were.
And how much you missed John.
Yeah, the show's different without John. I hope that bear stopped mauling him.
Yeah, and that his kids, I don't know, find a good foster family?
Yeah, I guess. So until hopefully next week, I'm Tom McShay, and
I'm Brendan Sinclair. We will see you soon on Quoted for Truth.
Yes.